Right, good morning everybody and welcome to today's Transport and Environment Committee. On the committee for those, and welcome to everybody watching on live stream. For your benefit, I'm Councillor Neil Clark, the Chairman, then have the two Vice Chairmen, Councillor Mike Adams and Councillor John Ogle, and then the rest of the committee we have Councillor Matt Barney, Maureen's, Glyn Guilfoyle, Councillor Penny Gowland, Tom Hollis, Sam Smith, Nigel Turner and John Wilmot. So you're all very welcome. Could I just remind people, as I've just remembered to do, to switch their mobile phones off so we don't get interrupted, which will be very helpful. Perhaps it's pretty obvious we've got a pretty packed agenda today. If I could ask people please to sort of stay focused and just focus on each item that's being discussed at the time, and hopefully we'll just have sort of one contribution from each member on each item so that we can make sure we keep moving along the agenda. Don't want to stifle debate, but on the other hand, we have got an awful lot of business to get through. So if we could keep focused, that would be very helpful indeed. Item 1, the minutes of the last meeting held on the 13th of October. May I sign those as a true and correct record? All those in favour? Thank you. Item 2, apologies for absence, please.
Apologies from Councillor Maureen Dobson. She's given other reasons. No other apologies received.
Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, declarations of interest by members and officers. Firstly, are there any disclosable pecuniary interests? And secondly, any private interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary? Councillor Barney?
Yeah, I just raised this. I don't think it quite fits into either, but I've had an email from a very polite and well-written email from Dr. Monica Pallis, and I suspect all members of the committee have. This is in relation to item 7, PFI contract and resources and waste strategy for England 2018. So I just thought I ought to declare that.
Thank you. Yes, I've received that email, and I think all members have received that as well. So just basically a declaration of lobbying on that issue. Councillor Hollis, I think.
Just to, again, probably state the obvious, including that one. Item 7, any district or borough members, obviously we are involved with that contract in our roles at district and boroughs. Other than that, no personal or pecuniary
Yeah,
interest.
I think, well, that's just part and parcel of the role, isn't it? So, yeah. Right, okay. Great, lovely. So, into the substantive items of the agenda then. Item 4, which is the flood risk management update. What a great comprehensive report this is, and achieving an awful lot. And I'm going to ask Sue Jakes, would you like to present the report to us?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, everybody. So this report is an update for members on the latest position in relation to the council duties and statutory responsibilities we have under the Flood and Water Management Act. As lead local flood authority, I'm very pleased to be able to report that the County Council is meeting all its statutory duties and delivering its obligations, and that's done with many thanks actually to the support of partners and colleagues in this endeavour, and their support is very strong for us. One of our statutory responsibilities is to have a flood risk management strategy, which requires revision every 6 years. The strategy, new one, will take us through to 2027, and that is with you today for your approval. It builds on our experience that we've gained as a lead local flood authority, and we hope that it provides clarity on the authority's role and our ambitions for the future. The feedback from partners and the public consultation has been very supportive. The old strategy was some 200 pages long, so we hope that this one's a little bit more accessible for you. And lastly, we'd like to share with you a very short 3-minute video that was produced in a couple of days that supported the authorities' bid to COP26, and it shows some of the new technology that we're utilising to help tackle flood risk in the county, to help our communities more resilient. So I'll hand over to Callum to press the button and hopefully away we go.
Nottinghamshire County Council is proposing to increase our usage of technology and engineering advancements to change the way in which flood risk is managed across the region. By utilising different aspects of technology, we can both decrease our overall carbon footprint and strengthen the resilience of our water bodies and water network to decrease the rebuild requirement after major flooding events. We are currently installing solar-powered CCTV and telemetry in 4 pilot areas on our watercourses across Nottinghamshire. This method of inspection and management will be a decrease in visits to these areas drastically, decreasing the amount produced by colleagues undertaking this task. We are currently piloting the use of drones across the normally require a greater amount of human interaction and preparation to complete. The task of inspecting large areas of land, watercourses or water bodies can be a person-intensive job, requiring multiple individuals from a wide area. A single person with a drone is able to survey and inspect a large area in a short amount of time. This reduction in people on site provides a direct benefit to reducing the amount of CO2 we as an authority produce. As the climate shifts, communities are becoming at greater risk of flooding and are suffering repeat flooding events. We're seeing a greater number of these on a yearly basis, and they are causing resources to become stretched, causing more and more properties to be damaged by water and a greater need to be present in more areas during storms. The role of local authorities during flood events have a range of tasks and roles, from collecting data, providing advice, guidance and support, assisting with the vulnerable and undertaking maintenance, and clearing key flood risk assets across the authority. The increase in flooding has seen a greater need to ensure our resources are focused at our most vulnerable and our most at-risk communities. However, this is a challenge of which has had to become overcome using advancements in technology. With regards to our pilot sites, these communities are not eligible for funding and have on several occasions had to rebuild and repair their homes. During an event, typically officers would have to attend site to assess and investigate whether any positive remedial work would be needed to reinforce the resilience of the network. By using CCTV, we plan to receive live images of these sites to feed directly to officers, so where resources are not required, they can be appropriately allocated to other key sites. This allows us to ensure as many of our at-risk communities as possible can be assessed and inspected, and where possible, remedial work undertaken. This also has the added benefit of decreasing the amount of routine inspection needed on the ground, which has a direct improvement through the lifetime of these assets. Our project not only hopes to increase the resilience of our communities and of the environment, but to also decrease our authority's carbon footprint. Using new technology, such as telemetry and drones, we can decrease the amount of third-party input needed for tasks across both our authority and our neighbouring authorities. Our drones have the potential, with certain tasks, to both greatly reduce our carbon emissions and reduce the individuals needed to task, or reduce the number of vehicles needed on the road. Although ensuring our communities, we also want to ensure we are reducing our impact.
Is that the end? I think the sound was slightly hit and miss, I think, is the polite way to describe that. Presumably, was that because of the transmission on the screen rather than, presumably if it was watched properly on a laptop, then it would be all right, would it?
Yeah, the live stream to COP26 worked fantastically, and at 10:15 in here it was amazing. I don't quite know what happened when we went live, but we can provide it if anybody would like to watch it.
Great, lovely. Okay, right. I would like to first of all move the recommendations 1, 2, 3 and 4 on page 21. Do I have a seconder, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. And thankfully for everybody here, Sue's ability to tackle floods is a lot better than the technology. But I did want to thank Sue firstly for the work her and her team do on the flooding, and members will be aware that our group does have a very keen interest in it, and they do a great work. But I think it's fair to say our waterways have never been in the news so much as of late. The government's Environment Bill has been approved by Parliament following a lengthy battle over the amount of sewage released into rivers. The House of Lords had proposed putting a legal duty on water firms to reduce untreated sewage discharges, which our MPs, including the leader of the council, voted against. Following pressure from peers and campaigners, the government put forward its own alternative. MPs and peers have now voted for the plan, but it's not enough and did not include proper timetables or targets for companies to reduce sewage discharge. Every river in Nottinghamshire suffers from unchecked pollution. Does Sue and yourself, Chairman, feel that the failure to legislate adequately adds to the already significant flooding risk in Nottinghamshire? Thank you.
Thanks for that. Just before I come to Sue, what I would say is that, and it is highlighted, and it's really the thrust of the first part of the recommendation is, and I've made no secret of the fact, we are titled the Lead Flood Authority, but in reality we have, well, I wouldn't say little teeth, we don't have enough teeth to be able to act as the Lead Flood Authority. So that's very much part of my ambition, is to lobby government, and I've already talked to officers, discussed this with officers, to lobby government to increase our authority as that title of Lead Flood Authority, so that it means something, so that we've got some teeth to actually act and get things done. So it's very much one of my ambitions. In fact, I seem to recall, I'm sure I highlighted that at our very first meeting of this committee way back in, whenever it was, May, June, whenever it was.
But you count on our support, full support with that as well.
Great, thank you for that. Sue, sorry, anything you'd like to add to that?
Just to say, the main rivers are looked after by the Environment Agency, so the pollution element is dealt with them by them. But as the lead local authority, we would absolutely look to support the Environment Agency in their moves and do everything that we can for the good of the authority.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman. Paragraph 22 on page 7 covers the Titchfield Park Brook scheme, which cost £300,000. Ashford District Council were delighted to have been heavily involved in both the design and the delivery of the scheme. This project will project 86 properties from flooding along the Titchfield Park Brook, and has certainly been welcomed by residents and park users alike. It just goes to show that the councils working together can deliver results and obviously benefit local residents and deliver projects on time and on budget. I welcome the fact that the problem on Thoresby Dale now seems to have been largely resolved. And I also thank the officers for listening to and acting on my concerns. Can I say also, unfortunately, on the Titchfield Park Brook scheme, I've had a number of inquiries saying that with the autumn leaves situation, it was blocked actually yesterday, and I just wondered who is responsible for the maintenance of that situation. Is it the County Council or is it Ashfield District Council? Because the project obviously is to do with both. And is there any maintenance resources available to sort those problems out? And of course, we have to say about the leaves. As I'm going around, people are complaining that many of the gullies are blocked. and if it should become a real problem, I wonder if there's any maintenance available for that too, because it is a serious situation. That's all over Nottinghamshire situation, and I just wondered if you've got plans to sort some of those problems out. Of course, finally, I'll talk about the Baker Lane Brook, the Baker Lane Brook, which we are responsible for. I've now found out totally that the retaining walls, as I said about 3 months ago, were badly damaged by vandalism, I think. Well, we don't know, actually. And many of the bricks and the wall itself was put into the river, and it's still there, and nothing's ever been done about it. I just wondered if we could have an update on, because I was promised that it was going to be sorted, and also the Baker Lane Brook goes into Titchfield Street, where the open space is, and it's not, you can't see the brook at all. It's just weeds 3 foot, 4 foot high in it, and that must be a problem. And we have to remember, it's not long ago that the whole of the high street in Hucknall was flooded, and that's a concern to us all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And yeah, I was very pleased to visit Titchfield Park and see it for myself. And I remember seeing you in the park at the time, Councillor
Yes,
Wilmot.
that's right, yeah.
So we said hello. And I was very impressed with it. I'll ask Sue to make any comment she wants in a second. But just on the leaves side, in fact, that sort of touches also, and if I could ask that we just sort of hold that over to the item on highways review, because that crosses over to that as well, where we talked about trying to get more involvement with local communities, that everybody works together to help assist clear things like leaves and gullies, etc., away. And quite often it can be a simple task to do, rather than ask somebody to come along with a truck sort of from 10 or 20 miles away. So, as I say, if we could just hold that one over to the Highways Review item, where we're perhaps discussing that in more detail. Sue, is there anything else you'd like to add on either Titchfield or Baker Lane?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilmot, for those questions. If I can come back to you after committee in detail on the issues around the Brook, I can give you a full update on that. We'll liaise with our colleagues at Ashfield around the maintenance of their assets on Titchfield, and we'll follow that up for you.
Thank you. Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. On the flood risk management strategy objective 4, it talks about the integration with local planning. And I'll be honest, planning remains a mystery to me after all these years. And I don't totally get where the one responsibility starts and another ends. But it seems to put a lot of weight on SUDs. And it feels to me that that's sort of shutting the door after the horse has bolted. Sorry, I'm not really being able to speak properly. But what about surfaces? Is that part? Can you comment on the surfaces that are being used in planning applications to try and make them more permeable? Tree growth to try and absorb water, because there's a lot of
Yeah, in actual fact, we have talked about that with people like Severn Trent, and it's an ongoing discussion, and it's I agree with you, and it's very much something that I would like to have further discussions with the local planning authorities to ensure they do consider, take into account our comments as lead flood authority in preventing or not causing problems of flooding by virtue of the development, and also specifically to look at surfaces such as, an example, driveways, making sure they're permeable and not sort of solid concrete or whatever, to try and get the water to soak straight into the ground rather than be running off, as I think you've implied, and causing a flood. Sue.
I think I just concur with everything that's been said.
Oh, I've stolen your thunder. So.
Not at all, not at all. We absolutely agree that SUD's natural flood management is the way forward. We provide our comments as strongly as we can to the determining authorities, and we continue to work with them to help find a better solution.
Councillor Guilfire. I don't think your microphone's on. No, it's not.
Gone off again.
It is now. It is now.
Okay.
Yep. Far away.
Like the strategy as it's presented, it's an easy read, which makes a difference, especially when you look at the one later on, the submission for transport.
I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, but it's an easy read, and very well laid out. So congratulate the people who've put this together. In relation to the lead authority issue, I think you're quite right. I think there's an element of confusion out there with the public, and also within the buck passing that happens when an incident occurs about who is the lead, who should be doing what, causes no end of problems. Not just for us as members, but also again for the public out there. So yes, it would be better if there was a single lead authority that not only looked at the overview of flooding and but also during the incidents that occurred, that had that coordination. And I know we do have that, and that we do work with our district partners. But as you know, there's also that issue about who does what, who provides what at what particular time, and and people in trouble don't want that. They want it to happen, come what may. And I think sometimes it does need that particular lead to enable that to be said. That's going to happen, and it's going to happen now. Whereas what does happen is a lot of telephone calls about, well, we'll do this, and can you do that, or we haven't got the money to do this, and it's so yeah, that really does need honing in on that, and I'm sure our side would support that. All in all, as I say, it's a good document. A lot of reds, though, when you read the plan later on. A lot of high priorities there, and a lot of work in progress. And I know, I know the amount of work that our staff do, and there is a lot in there. Just does give me that concern when you see too many eyes in a document like this, too many priorities. Because sometimes things slip through the net when you've got that many. You can't sort of have so many balls swinging. But all in all, support it, and hopefully we'll get that lead authority sorted out.
Thanks for that. Yes, there's sort of all sorts of different levels of projects. I visited Loudon, for instance, and saw what the Environment Agency is doing. A lot of that's a big project, a lot of money going into alleviate that flooding. And then at another end of the scale, I also visited Thurgerton, where there's a volunteer group working together. Obviously, they can't stop the flooding, but they can help react to the flooding and protect residents and their neighbours. And so it's all about working together, and I think we are doing, and I think the officers are doing a great job in bringing people together so that we can all contribute to trying to alleviate the impact of flooding as much as we can. Councillor Ogle.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the legislation was mentioned, and I'd support efficient legislation, because it's often when there is flooding that you get these sewage discharges into the water. And I'd support holding Severn Trent to account, as there is a health risk by having the sewage discharged into the drainage system, and I've seen quite a lot of it, certainly in my villages and my area. So, and I know you're working on pursuing getting effective responsibility for partners, so I'll support you in that, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. I think no other speakers, so you reserve the right to speak. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just a couple of bits. Obviously, to go back to Councillor Wilmot's point around street sweeping, we have an issue, and blocked gullies, we have an issue in Gedling, particularly with street road sweeping that effectively leads to the blocking up of the gullies, and it is currently the district's responsibility to sweep the streets of leaves and other things. It's something that we're trying to keep raising, because it's, obviously one problem leads to another, and if that's not resolved, those gullies get blocked up, and it becomes inefficient, and the roads get flooded, as we know, and it's something that happens regularly in our own area. And as far as working together as well, on your other point, Councillor Wilmot, absolutely. I think the continued working together of everybody needs to come together and resolve these problems. We all have different responsibilities in different areas, and we have to make sure that every single connection in that chain is operating at maximum efficiency and doing the job it's designed to do. If one part of that chain fails, so does the removal of water from the surface, as well as I'd also like to see more residents in the future, more developers in the future using rainwater harvesting technology within their housing developments to ensure that rainwater is used to flush toilets, wash clothes, as well. I think it's something we're missing massively on a scale that, you effectively only have to use that water once. Then if it's landing on your roof, it goes straight into your tank. You then use it to flush your toilet. It only goes down the drain once. Currently, anything that hits your roof goes down into the surface drain, into the water drain, and then also anything that you use from the mains also goes into the drain. So you can cut your water, the sort of disposal of water in half with rainwater harvesting technology as well. And I think that's something that we need to look at. But permeable driveways are obviously a massive thing and continue to be incredibly important. Anywhere we can add permeable surface we should. And so, yeah, lots of work. I think it's a great report. Hell of a lot of work's gone into it, and obviously we're incredibly proud with the work that's been done and continue to do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for that. We've recommendations in front of us, which have been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Moving straight on to item 5, the highways review. If I could just start things off there, because it has been a really big piece of work, and I just want to emphasise a few things. Firstly, obviously, it has been cross-party, all political parties involved. In fact, I'm wearing my cross-party collaboration tie at the moment, see, just to demonstrate how inclusive it has all been, which I am very grateful that everybody has made constructive contributions. It's been very helpful. We've had 5 formal meetings and also demonstration at the depot. We've had outside assistance as well. We've had the peer review from the Local Government Association. We've had an independent consultant, WSP, helping us. And also we've talked to several other county council highway authorities to see how they do things as well. I would like to thank the officers very much, all the officers involved. It's been a tremendous amount of work in order to bring these recommendations to us today. Also, I wanted to note the great cooperation from VIA in assisting us with this review and giving us all the information and working well together. So that has been extremely beneficial. What is really pleasing is that the recommendations that we came up with at the end were agreed unanimously across all the parties in the review panel, so that that's a good set of recommendations, 50-odd recommendations that we can work with and move forward with, which includes a highways improvement plan, which obviously has to go to a policy committee for final approval. Not going to go through all the recommendations now, but just to highlight a few things that have shown to be different. The way we look at the budget, changing that from a one-year programme to a 3-year programme, so that provides more certainty and people know when the work is going to be done. Moving to the right repair first time, and moving from the ambition to move away from the temporary pothole repairs to the more permanent repairs. Obviously, there are always going to be emergency pothole repairs required. You'll never eliminate that completely, but moving very much to a greater emphasis towards permanent, long-term repairs. We wanted to have a new brand, well, not a new brand, but a single brand, so that whenever we're talking about highways, I call it, if you like, the working title. Let's say it was Not Highways or whatever we finally decide upon, so that any communications going out, whether it's to ourselves or to the public, it's always under that one brand, so people know who they're dealing with. And we want to really increase the amount of communications that we have with the public, so the public will know their street is going to be repaired on at such and such a time. Even if it's several months hence, at least they know when it's going to be, rather than wondering, it's not being done, when's it going to be done? So we want to increase our communications very much, so that everybody knows what's happening. We're looking at seeing how we can improve the relationship with VIA, between the council and VIA, to improve that business working on operational relationship. And finally, we want to present these recommendations or the outcomes as to what we want to achieve. For instance, maybe going to people like town and parish council forums, etc. It's all about communication and making sure that people are aware as to what we're doing and what's going to be happening in the future. So communications is going to be playing an incredibly important part in that. And very much my hope that if we can all really work closely together, because at the end of the day, it's all about improving our environment for the people and visitors of Nottinghamshire as they move around the roads. So I will move the recommendations which are shown, and I'll ask for a seconder. Thank you. And could I ask if Mr. Higton, of anything you'd like to add before I open it up?
I think following that comprehensive introduction, Chairman, there's nothing else for me to add, but we're happy to take any questions, obviously.
Fair enough. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. And I welcome much of what you said, but just to, before I start, probably what I've prepared is, of course, it wasn't a unanimous decision in the review, but we were all allowed to contribute, and I thank you for allowing every group to contribute and listened. And it's clear to me in the final report there's elements of what we suggested and not, but obviously I wouldn't want it to be suggested that it's a unanimous, comprehensive endorsement. However, we welcome the positive steps. But I did have a couple of thank you to make before we begin. I'd like to thank the journalist who emailed me this document 24 hours before council has received it. It shows an arrogance and a reliance on the spin from this Tory administration, and I would like an assurance from the chairman in future he will respect the very councillors he relies on to vote for this. If spin and bluster led to a better quality of highway service, then we wouldn't have the worst roads in England. This report should come alongside a sincere apology for the 4 years of mismanagement of our broken roads and pavements by the Conservatives. You have wasted untold millions of pounds on botched jobs by a council who refuses to listen to the passion pleas of independent councillors to get their house in order until May this year. However, this report represents a step forward, including much of what, Chairman, you just said, including the reduced use of Viafix and renamed substitute, the use of better technologies available and processes in which the council will undertake to make our roads safer. I welcome the long-term 3-year plan to allocate funding. This needs to be flexible, however, to allow us to deal with urgent issues that impact over 3,000 miles of highways that have clearly left in a state of disrepair over a decade of failure. And I think also, just to make clear, I really welcome the fact that we're looking at these more permanent repairs as well, exactly as you just said, Chairman. I think that's going to be really key to much of what we got going forward. However, the leaked report rightly acknowledges the fact that the Conservative government have axed funding for highways since 2010. Members will note, and certainly members of the press listening, will note that those statements haven't appeared in the final draft of this report. I wonder why. For example, we are no clearer on whether the council plans to allocate funding in a more equitable way, something which both the Conservatives and Labour have criticised the independents for in many of these meetings, repeatedly seeking clarity, yet we're still no better off or no more enlightened. Areas like Ashfield, Broxtowe and Mansfield have lost out on millions of pounds compared to other districts, more affluent areas of the county. This won't change. We actually allocate funding through the usage of roads and not the length of roads. Not covered in the list of promises is obviously allocating this funding by the usage. Will this be a working document, Chairman, that will put right years of failure? Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm not quite clear what you mean in your first comments, because it was quite clear the recommendations at the final meeting of the panel that they were unanimously approved. So I stand by what I said. They were unanimous across all parties, because every body was represented at that final panel when those recommendations were approved. In terms of the 3 years, yes, you're right, which is why not everything is completely allocated, so that, for instance, when you get to year 3, we need to make sure that we've got some leeway to, there might be unforeseen circumstances or something crop up that we can't possibly foresee now that's going to happen in 3 years' time. So I agree, there needs to be that flexibility built in to cater for that leeway. I'm just trying to remember, I've forgotten now one of the last points you made. Oh, sorry, yes. If the bit about the government funding, top of page 49, the second bullet point talks about national funding levels, and nothing's changed from that, but what we will do is we will still keep lobbying government, and we will still keep pushing for, well, let's say, I was going to say our fair share. We'll push for more than our fair share in the hope that we at least get our fair share. So be assured that we will keep pushing by any means possible to make sure we get that assistance that we require, because I'm confident that this review will result in our roads the repairs and maintenance improving in the short term. I will caveat that by saying they won't improve tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. You know, this is going to be a long-term project over a certain amount of time. Therefore, we hope that we can communicate things better and improve, but obviously not everybody's repairs are going to be done instantly, but I sincerely hope they're done a lot quicker than perhaps they would have done in the past. But more importantly, we can tell people when their repairs are programmed, so that you know, there is that certainty that things will happen. Okay. Councillor Guilfoyle.
Thank you, Chairman. Clearly, you know, this has been a serious issue for members of the public out there wanting, you know, their roads repaired, but also wanting them made to a better standard. And we know that there is a very big gap between what we need and what we get in finance to be able to do the job. You know, so in reality, you know, the only realistic approach is to have a 3 or 5 year approach to some of the capital spend that we do on roads, because we can't deliver it all in the 1 year unless somebody gives us perhaps £200 million just like that and says, here, I'll get on and do it, then I'm sure we could. So, yeah, you know, there has got to be a timescale that's set out, but it's got to be clear, and the public, quite rightly, as you say, have got to know what that is so that they understand how long it will be before a particular road is going to be repaired, or even a footpath, because one of the problems is it's not just the highway as such, it is the public footpaths. It's also about the tree maintenance. It's also about the drainage problems. It's a major issue, and you know, quite rightly, we understand it will not be resolved overnight. But what I do look forward to, because clearly this is, you know, what's been set out, and is the improvement plan, because that's going to be the key. So in one sense, I'm going to reserve a lot of comment to see the improvement plan and see what comes out of that, because that is going to, and the delivery plan that comes out of that, because that's the key. And also that will show us clearly where money is going to be spent and where it isn't, and it will break that down into, I would presume, into, you know, how much is now going to be spent on footpaths, how much is going to be spent on roads, and exactly where that's going to do. And I would welcome, you know, and I'm sure most members would, to see their area with a 3-year plan that clearly defines what roads are going to be done over a particular period. And yes, I'm sure even with this, there will still be people who are disappointed and will still have gripes. But at least if we've got something tangible and realistic that you can explain to people that this is the reason why. Whereas at the moment, there isn't. I don't believe there's a logic to a lot of it. Hopefully, what will come out of this is some better logic that we can say to our constituents and others. Well, this is why, and this is when it'll happen. I know currently, you know, let's not be too down. You know, our officers do a good job with the money that they've got, but via fix, a lot of hope was put into Viafix, and I don't think it's turned out to be the right solution. And I can, you know, I particularly can show you a couple of particular roads in my area where it's, you know, looks like they've had a disease with all the holes that have dotted all over the road, and they're still coming again and again and again. You know, so it is a problem. We've got to get to grips with it. So I'll wait the improvement plan and the delivery mechanism for that. But obviously, what we want to see at the end of it is better quality and longer lasting, and that goes for footpaths as well.
Thank you. Yes, well, I agree with your sentiments. I mean, there will always be gripes and complaints somewhere. I think we're never going to eliminate them, but let's work as close as we can towards zero, and try our hardest. In terms of the Highways Improvement Plan, yes, that'll be going to Policy Committee for approval, and coupled with that, and I just remember there was a comment that Councillor Hollis made about sort of ongoing, or not forgetting about it, if you like. That's why we are suggesting this ongoing monitoring panel, or that this review panel still exists as a monitoring panel, so that we can keep track and keep a regular check that the improvement plan is working and is actually operating. So I think all the things are in place that we can improve as much as we can. Sorry, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, I've got some very sad news that there was a serious accident took place on Annesley Road in Hucknall, and the person, unfortunately, has passed away in hospital. I'm sure all of us will send the condolences to the family.
Indeed.
It's a serious situation, but we also have to remember that Annesley Road has been reported on a number of occasions, especially with the school on there as well, 2 schools actually, and I did ask for it to be looked into as a possible 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. In fact, I think all town centres should look into that situation, because some of the driving at the moment is really seriously at risk, putting people's lives at risk. And I'm sure, as an authority, we should all be aware of this and have a real serious discussion about it as soon as possible. The whole of the paper before us, I congratulate everyone on the hard work that's been put into it. There's no doubt about it. Everyone's tried to do their very, very best in a very difficult situation. But we do have problems. I'd like to refer you to paragraph 15. This paragraph continues, all in the right words, yet not necessarily in the right order. We've just had a report on flood management and strategy until 2027, yet there seems to be nothing in this about a gully cleaning programme, and that has to be sorted. As I said before, in the winter time or the autumn time, we do have a problem with the gullies, with the leaves, and it's nobody's fault. It's a situation that happens, but we have to have a policy in place to sort that out. But there was a man who lives close to George Street in Hucknall, stopped me yesterday, who swears his grill hasn't been cleaned since England won the World Cup in 1966. I don't know about that, but I would like to see this council promise to clean every gully in the county at least once annually. Can I say, I would like to, we called for it last year as an authority, and I call for it again today. I'm happy to provide the chairman with costings, and I'm sure he's got it anyway, on that situation. But it is a serious situation, and it can cause all sorts of things. If a gully's not getting rid of the surface water can come onto the road or the pavement, and then suddenly ice over, and it puts everybody at risk. And I know it's a difficult situation, and it's not a thing we can easily sort out, but it's a thing that has to be reported and looked into. It's about getting the basics right. I mean, we have to we all hear the tales about the county, about the state of broken roads and pavements, and as Councillor Hollis already said, providing this report in its list of promises is an admission that we've failed, and we've all failed on it. There's no doubt about it. Different people who have been in charge over the last many, many years. We've all made mistakes on it. But I'm glad to see that we are now looking more closely at the problem areas, and I'm pretty happy about that. We've told you time and time again, and yes, the independents in County Hall should claim some of the progress because of us continually saying about the problem. And I shall personally be watching you like a hawk. As you know, I walk the streets. I've seen you on a number of occasions, and I look at things, and people tell me what's going off, etc., on a regular basis, because, as I say, I'm on the roads every day, walking the streets, and often I get to ask if I've got nothing else better to do, but it's a situation that I take a lot of. I welcome the new technologies. I'd like to thank all our independent councillors for continuing to raise the inappropriate use of via fix. Again, I would like to know, and I don't know whether you've got this information on how many potholes were repaired more than once when it was actually the repair was done and it needed doing again within 6 weeks or 6 months or whatever. I don't know whether we've got information on that, but it'd be nice. It's a sort of a thing we should be looking at and making sure that we know exactly what the problem are and how much of a problem it is. As I say, but people working for this council have a reputation, unfortunately, akin to cowboy builders. I'm not calling any employees of this authority. They are brilliant. They are absolutely brilliant, and they work. But it's the process that has been wrong for a long, long time. I thank this authority now for looking at this situation, and I hope it will improve things. Because, gosh, we do need it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. I don't know, are you confessing that you're the reason that all the pavements are worn out because you keep walking the streets? I think we'll make a note of that. Yeah, just to answer just a few of your comments, and I'll turn to officers to talk about the re-repair of potholes or the revisiting. I suspect the answer may be it's not so much the actual pothole itself, it's probably the immediate area around it that needs further treatment, but I'll ask officers in a second. Just wanted to the Gully Clearing, you're right, as you alluded to in the previous item, and especially at this time of year where all the leaves, and it's impossible for everybody to zap round and clear them all instantly. I remember, for instance, in the floods of November 19, I was out on Melton Road in West Bridgeford. It was flooded. I'd got a rake and a fork in the back of my Discovery, and I actually got my wellies on and I went out and I actually cleared the gullies myself, and the water in the space of about 15-20 minutes the water disappeared. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because as part I've gone and lost the page now. Last bullet point, top of page 52, talks about community-based approaches and where we can maybe work more closely with communities to get, I use the phrase lengthsman, although that's probably not quite the right word, but basically we all need to work together, and if there's a gully that needs clearing, that somebody can just go out and clear it rather than waiting for a truck to drive 20 miles to clear it. In terms of the speed limit, then 20 miles an hour, what I would say is that there is going to be a motion at full council coming up next week where it refers to 20 miles an hour. Councillor Gallant has indicated you want to speak. I don't know, was it referring to that or something else? Was it something else? Was it? Yeah, right. Okay, so there will be a debate in full council about that next week. But certainly you're right. Everybody, all drivers need to be encouraged to be a lot more careful and to drive more slowly, for sure. Yeah, Thank you. Sorry, I don't know, officer-wise, whether there's any on the return to pothole repairs, Mr Wood?
Yes, it's something that the panel did discuss, and at the moment it's really hard to get that data as you describe. It's hard to know whether it's that old pothole or something adjacent to it. But with the new processes and the the opportunity this creates to get the repairs right the first time, I think we'll be looking to see whether it makes sense to have a performance indicator with VIA around that in the future to try and reduce those repeat visits. And then on the gully emptying, what I would offer to you, Councillor Wilmot, is if I can either send you a briefing note or give you a briefing about what we currently do, because obviously we do have a gully cleaning schedule for all of our gullies across the county. So it might be useful if I spoke to you outside of the meeting and just brought you up to speed with that.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Councillor Gallant.
Thank you. I'm not going to say much, but it's obviously good to see a long-term plan for dealing with this problem. It's good for both financial reasons and, of course, for resource management reasons, which is good for the planet. Obviously, I'm very pleased to see footpaths getting a mention. One thing I'd say is, as somebody at work said to me about this recently, a stitch in time saves 9, and really, ultimately, the whole problem comes down to lack of investment, and it costs more to do it later if we don't, as was so eloquently described to us in the committee, in the working group. If you don't paint your windowsills this year, you'll have to replace the window panes in 10 years' time, and this is the ultimate problem, but it's a good way forward now. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Right, I don't think there are any other speakers, so oh, sorry, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I sat on the panel that carried out this vital piece of work, and it is easy for us all to sit here and say what wasn't quite right in the past. And I think, as Councillor Guilfoyle said, the residents have made that absolutely clear, and that they want better roads. And we are listening to that, and the previous Conservative administration did listen to it by increasing funding allocated to road repairs, and this review's listening to that, and I think it's great. If you look at point 1 and 2 on point 9, page 49, we are, the outcome of this review is to move away from veer fix repairs, which residents often complain to us about, and councillors complain about as well, including me. And for our residents, that means we're going to go to a right first-time approach and more patching and more resurfacing, and that will make a real difference to what residents see every day, what roads they drive on, and will certainly reduce councillors' inboxes as well, hopefully. So that's a positive there. And it also recognises the prevention is better than cure, so that's moving from a reactive to a proactive approach. And I think just those two, there's a lot of recommendations in there, but just those two changes that this council's going to make are a massive step forward and a massive step change to be welcome. And there is more to do as well, which we've all recognised. So I think that's really good as well. Just on drainage, if I may, on point 15, page 51, I welcome the increase in financial provision for drainage. There's a particular issue in my area, Wolf Avenue, that has drainage problems. They've broken, and we just don't have the allocation at the moment to action those works. It's the highest priority, but still might take years to get done. And what this recommendation will actually do is give more money to that to try and get those repairs done, and then again moving away from a reactive to more of a proactive, which I think is to be welcome, and that's great. The County Council, Councillor Wilmot, are responsible for repairs to the drainage system and everything under the road. So if your drains in your patch haven't been swept at the top, then maybe have a word with your own council, because the district council are responsible for that. But yeah, this report's a great piece of work and a massive step forward, which I'm sure residents will appreciate. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And lastly, Councillor Ogle.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I'd welcome the recommendations and thank all contributors, both officers and councillors. The recommendations moving to right first time, which is focusing on quality, prevention better than cure, high standard of repair, an improvement in delivery. So we should see a higher standard, and I hope the roads are repaired when necessity dictates it, rather than on an area basis, because I know that they do have these, we should know that they've got these processes for identifying when the roads need repairing. So that should be done with increased efficiency and effectiveness because of this review. I just mention the gullies because there's been mention of it. All the highways chambers in the past have not been maintained properly, and the worst thing I would say is when they've been blocked and there's been no record and just been left. So, you know, we've accepted that, and if they've not been cleared or repaired, we do need the money for that. I do know that it's timely to mention this because the Highways Chambers maintenance contract is coming up for renewal. At the present, it's outsourced. So I'd hope that VIA certainly look into improving this contract and perhaps consider taking it back in-house, but certainly review before renewing the contract. And it would be useful if any of that information, when that contract comes up, that it could come to this committee, Chairman. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Right, thank you. I will note that. Okay,
Chairman,
right.
I just have a point of order, which I may not need to raise as a point of order, but one of my questions wasn't answered. I was really concerned for myself, but also other members, that the press was leaked this document before we do. And like other members, I get calls from the press asking for a comment. I was just left with a bit of egg on my face that they'd got the report and I hadn't, this agenda pack. And I just wondered if you wanted to take an opportunity to apologise to members that the press had received our agenda before all members on this committee.
Well,
and an assurance it won't happen again.
I've no idea because I wasn't involved in arranging PR, so I don't know what. I couldn't be sure what actually happened. So we can we'll investigate or see what happened.
Well, could we have an assurance that it won't happen again? That's probably a simple thing. I appreciate that.
We'll attempt to make sure it wouldn't happen again. That's for sure.
Seems fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So these recommendations, which are shown on page 56, which I'll just preface by saying thank you very much indeed to all the officers and everybody involved, and also to members of the panel for all the hard work which has been undertaken. But the job is not finished, and it's still an ongoing work. So with that, all those in favour of those recommendations, please. And I'm glad to say that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Moving swiftly on then to agenda item 6, the National Bus Strategy and Transport Update. And I'll immediately, I think, Pete, are you... right, Pete Matheson, if you'd like to introduce the report, please. This very short report.
Thank you, Chair. I'll make it as short as possible. So this report outlines the current impact of COVID-19 pandemic on bus service patronage and the new bus recovery grant arrangements from September 2021 until April 22 to support the sector, and provides an overview of the council response to the pandemic in the provision of bus services, school and send transport, and the operation of Nottinghamshire County Council bus stations. However, the key element of the report is to seek approval to submit the National Bus Strategy Bus Service Improvement Plans bidding documentation, which sets out the County Council's ambitious plans to improve bus services and bus infrastructure to help the recovery of the bus sector, wider economic recovery, and meet the Council's commitments to tackle climate change and improve air quality. These plans have been developed in partnership with local bus operators and take account of residents' views on the improvements they would like to see. Within the report, the range of improvements have been outlined in paragraphs 23 to 28 and split into several elements from improvements to bus services, including demand responsive transport, bus priority, bus stop infrastructure, fares and ticketing, and fleet decarbonisation. These improvements would, for the members of the public, for instance, for a commuter, may mean increased job opportunities are available due to number of services and therefore reduced journey time due to bus priority, while a rural resident will have a DRT service, increasing travel opportunities with guaranteed connections with other bus services and through ticketing. And lastly, this report seeks approval to develop the bus service improvement plans into an enhanced partnership plan scheme to go out to public consultation later this year. A further committee report will follow to adopt the enhanced partnership and scheme for implementation in April 2022.
Thank you very much indeed for that. So before I open it up, I'll move the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 on page 66. Seconder. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, obviously this is an incredibly comprehensive strategy that, or plan rather, that is here, extremely detailed, and not helped by the fact that obviously in the last sort of couple of years, with all our COVID and health problems, sort of bus services have been sort of thrown into some element of disarray, and the usage has, shall we say, varied, and that hasn't helped at all. So to be able to come forward with such a strategy and a plan, and hopefully, fingers crossed, let's all just hope that things can get back to some normality so that we can be using the buses in a more comprehensive way to help save the environment, which is the last part of our title of the committee, because it's important that we can promote public transport and reduce the usage of the car as much as we can, and let's hope the health problem will normalise such that we can get back to proper usage and actually use this plan. Right, it's been moved and seconded. So, Councillor Hollis.
Well, I certainly unanimously agree with what you just said there, 100%.
Oh, right, sorry, moving on.
That is the start, yeah. Not so quick, but not much of what I've got to say is quite constructive, really added on to that. But I will make one probably flippant remark. I think if this, if I'd taken this agenda report onto the bus, I think it'd need its own ticket, to be honest with you. So it's that big. But I think in noting in this report, in item 2 about improving bus services to vaccination centres, I just also wanted to flag the help of other organisations, particularly charitable organisations like our centre, largely a volunteer group that assisted greatly in transporting residents to the vaccination centres. And as all members will note, particularly Conservative members, the Independent Alliance Group is a fast-growing group on this council. And I reached out to our group in the light of this report, and Councillor Steve Carr has asked me to raise this. Residents in Bramcote area are travelling to the city for service because of the abolition of the L10 and the L11 by Nottingham City Council in June this year. We should be encouraging residents of this county to shop in the county. If the County Council is successful in gaining the £98 million from the government, will the Chairman commit to restoring bus services to Bramcote to the pre-pandemic levels? Further to this, parts of Ashfield like Stanton Hill, Carsick, Huthwaite are more likely to see Lord Lucan riding Shareguard down the roads of the main roads than a bus. Do you accept that a root and branch review of the network, the bus network coverage, needs to happen sooner rather than later? Thank you, Chairman and officers.
Thank you for that. And in fact, Councillor Carr has raised the L10 and 11 with me on previous occasions. A service which I understand used to be financed by the city, and they withdrew that funding. Certainly, what I can commit to is the implementation of this bus improvement plan, which we are hopefully going to be approving. Mr Matheson, is there anything you'd like to add in terms of the L10, L11 service or anything else?
One of the things we will be doing over the coming months will be doing a bus network review, because we're very unsure as to how the pandemic will pan out and what patronage levels will be like in April. And within that, we will be looking at those gaps and looking how we could potentially fill them should we get the funding. But only if we get all the funding would we be able to do all the improvements. So there'll have to be some consideration of each one on its own merits, but we'll certainly consider that in the mix.
Great. Okay.
Is that okay? I appreciate what you said about only members speaking once, so I'll be brief. This is something that I certainly get a lot of, and I know other members do as well. But particularly with the evolution of changing town centres, we all want to go to the services, like have a drink, etc. And we want a good bus service. And I just think it's not only important for the elderly, if you like, who like going into the local town centres, but to get to the city centres as well. Not to contradict what I've said before, and provide people with more central town centres like Mansfield, like West Bridgeford, and other more larger towns. The services aren't there, and I find it quite frustrating, particularly in light of your point there, Chairman, and Councillor Gowland's point about the environment being very important. I think this root and branch approach really needs to be focused on, and I think we'll get a lot of pound for back, because of course we get money back from business rates from the businesses that we're helping people get to. But I don't know if, Mr. Chairman, we could have an element of focus on it past this report.
Yeah, well, I think if that can be part of sort of your ongoing review, then we'll consider it in that process. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Chairman. I just hope that the bus comes quicker than the time it's taken me to read this report. It took me about five hours to do it. But
just be careful what you wish for. You might get two reports coming along together.
Well, can I say first of all that it's concerning that only 65 or to 70% of the passenger levels are at pre-pandemic levels, and the concessionary use down to 55 to 60% is pretty low for the pensioners, because it's very often it's only that they get the opportunity to go out on a bus, because we've got a concession from the county council, which is brilliant. It's very, very concerning to us all, because I just wish that and hopefully we'll get back to normal on that situation. But many are saying they won't use the buses because of the mask situation, and there's so many people running about on buses. Unfortunately, and they're saying that they're breathing over everybody and so forth. It's a serious situation that needs to be addressed, I just hope that we talk to the bus companies about this situation. I mean, putting more information in to say that. We look every day the amount of people that's still catching the COVID virus. It's unbelievable. To say that, and it's all because people are not taking the necessary precautions, and it's a serious situation. But anyway, I welcome this bid, which includes proposal to improve the bus services, obviously, and to simplify fares and tickets, install more real-time displays, and improve accessibility at bus stops. That's another issue. Bus stops in the rural areas, they're non-existent. Will the bus stop for anyone that puts the hand up? We need to talk to the bus companies about that, to make sure that they don't miss a pensioner who's no idea where he's got to stand to pick up a bus fare, a bus travelling through, and we want to know more about that situation. And can I also say this is one of the main causes for poor social mobility. It really is a problem. Buses are at least unreliable at the moment, and that's because I know they've got a problem with drivers. There's a lack of drivers and this, that and the other, but I don't know whether we can help in any way by making sure that people have the opportunity to learn how to support people who want to be a bus driver and this, that and the other and so forth. And more information needs to go out, because we do need these services, and we need them for our people, and that's absolutely essential. Can I just say, not contained in this report are comments actually attributed to you and in the media, Mr. Chairman. Over the summer, we ran a survey to find out what people wanted to change about changes about buses and what would make them more likely to choose bus travel in the future. I don't see anywhere in this report giving out that report to see what the results of that survey was. It isn't in, definitely in. Could I request details of the results of this survey and how many people participated in it, from where, will the detailed results of the survey be used as part of this bid? Thank you very much for your help.
Good, thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Well, I certainly echo what you're saying. It is very difficult, the usage of buses at the moment with COVID, and you're right, some people are still fearful of getting on the bus because of those health reasons. So that's what I meant in my earlier comments. It's still a very difficult situation, and it's not easy. I think there are a couple of things. Firstly, if Ms. Higton, can you? All right. Okay. What Councillor Wilmot's just asked, and also about the what I'll call, if you like, the random stopping in rural areas as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in regard to the survey, in paragraph 21, we give a summary of the findings from the survey that was done. It was about 3,500 people between the two bus service improvement plans that we've got in there. We had about 50-50 split between the two. And then it outlines what some of those major improvements they would like to see, and hence that's informed the BSIP development. So these plans we put together taking into account that information, as well as our own gap analysis on what needs to be out there to meet the aspirations of the National Bus Strategy. In regard to your other comments about information, there's a lot of improvements we're looking to do in there to improve information, to make sure people are aware of what bus services are where, any stopping arrangements that there may be. I think you're talking about where it's hail and ride services, for instance, and making it very clear where that's the case. We're also looking at demand responsive transport, where you'll be able to book your actual where you want to pick it up, which I think will help people give more accessibility to it, and that's part of the demand responsive transport funded project that we'll be looking to implement. So I think that will be better, and we're looking to make sure that real-time information is easily accessible so people know that the bus is actually coming as well, because we are aware that there is sometimes reliability problems, or there's issues on the network that sometimes mean buses turn up late, or if they're not running at all, in those extreme circumstances we can tell those customers how that would be.
Okay, thank you.
Just a very quick one. On that situation, yeah, it is a real problem for anyone in the outlying areas if the bus doesn't turn up at all, and it could be a vulnerable person.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to really thank you for this long document. I mean, it must have been a huge amount of work. I can't imagine how anybody could be on top of it all. So thank you very much. I also like to thank the bus drivers who've been working during the pandemic and taking the risks with their lives, really getting people to work in public services that were vital to us. I love when the clocks go back, because that's when I get chauffeured to work down VIP routes past all the traffic jams by bus drivers on the bus lanes. The thing that I find saddest in this report is the page, I think it's page 92, the graph showing the amount of money that's gone into the buses compared to the usage. And what that indicates is the price has gone up to me. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Oh, sorry, I think it's page 92. Yeah, page 92 of the main document. So the price has gone up, which means people who need these buses most are either going into sort of transport poverty or being priced out of the buses, which is not good. So hopefully this investment might help to reverse some of that. On very specific things, it's great to see new buses, particularly in the city, are biogas. I feel ashamed that the diesel fleet is being retrofitted. I mean, clearly it's good to remove the particulates, but it would seem better to be getting more new buses that are not diesel. I am, as people know, perturbed by the use of green bus shelters. This seems the epitome of greenwashing to me, except in exceptional circumstances when, you know, what's it doing for the environment, except costing us money. We could be investing in more direct green changes. I'm pleased to see a focus on marketing, because we need everybody to understand, you know, how wonderful, frankly, the buses are in the city area. And I do appreciate, I'm fortunate, I live in West Bridgford, and so the buses into the city and around the city are really amazing. I do think, coming back to, I completely concur with what Councillor Wilmot said, sorry. It would be really helpful, I think, if the county could consider a windows and masks campaign, because it is true that normally people are wearing masks on the buses, at least when I'm travelling, and maybe they are more during the time when retired people are travelling. And also to tell people, open those windows, because, you know, yeah, it's chilly, but it's better than being in the rain. And it means that you don't have to worry about the COVID as much. Gloves as well. Gloves on the buses are a good idea. Back to the old days of, you know, white gloves. I welcome the report. It's great to see an investment in this area, and I encourage everybody to use the bus.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Smith, no, right. Oh, you just got in, Councillor Guilford. By the skin of your teeth. Right. By the thickness of a bus ticket.
Yeah. I welcome the fact looking at a network review, because I think that is really key to locality services. You know, clearly, you know, this is the overarching strategy. But, you know, I am interested in locally in Bassett Law. I don't drive, so I am a public transport user. You know, and I find it very difficult sometimes, like the Plus bus coming in. You don't know which buses will accept it and which they won't in the city. You know, you sort of, it's like trying to remember, as opposed to what I would like is that any bus that came by, as opposed to me having to wait, you know, to get across here, that I can jump on it with a Plus bus, but I'm not quite sure which one. So I think better information around that people would want. And also the through ticketing, you know, I mean, it's been mentioned so many times, you know, that is such sort of thing. And I think another issue is fares. You know, some of the fares do look a little bit ridiculous sometimes. You know, what a single fare into a town can be rather exorbitant in some cases. Real-time display, I mean, look how far we've come since that started. I mean, I don't know how long it's been in. You'll probably be able to tell me. About 10 years, is it? Is it a bit longer, something like that? It's fantastic. There are issues, and there always will be with data like that. But I'd like to just see it on every bus stop, because I think it's so important for people, because if they could see that, you know, the bus come in when they're walking by, they probably would catch the bus, and it would then increase the amount of money that we get in, then less subsidy on the bus services. So for me, real-time display is really, in some respects, key to what we do. I think, like my colleague, you know, thanking the drivers who have been driving through COVID, but also the impact that it has had. And then straight after that, now in Bassett Law, we've got the problem with the dispute that's going on with Stagecoach and the lack of drivers compounding, so that services now, they are showing up. You know, you can stand at a bus stop, it shows you that a bus is due, it ticks down that, and because of the problems, they've now gone from a 15-minute to a half-hourly service. Actually, stood there, it goes down, and everybody's going, oh, good, it's coming in 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, goes off the board, next one in 30 minutes. You know, you've got pensioners who've been stood there already 10 minutes, you know, getting there on time for what they thought was a bus coming, and it's now not coming at all, and they're just left. You know, they will make decisions about how they get into town. You know, they may get together and get a taxi, which then affects, you know, the bus usage again. That really does need to be bottomed, and you know, Stagecoach do need to get their act together in Worksop, because it is causing serious problems. Just on could I have an explanation on the journey planning kiosks? Are we talking about the ones where they're connected to the Wi-Fi and you can get on and search? Because I actually, they're a good idea, but they're not very user-friendly. It's so difficult sometimes to find, you want to plan the journey and we've got this here. Sometimes they're so robust because of vandalism that makes it too awkward for you to use. The other times you go and the internet's down, so you can't actually use it anyway. My personal sort of view is that the person that we have based in some of the centres who can give you that and look for you and show you and tell you where the bus leaves from is the best. And I think probably we get nothing but praise for that service in all the areas where that is. Now, I know you can't do that in rural areas and whatever, but I think that is, wherever possible, that is the best way. Or, when you can ring in, the travel plan, when you ring in there and you talk to the officers, their knowledge is unbelievable, about it. So, for me, that is a better system than perhaps spending a lot more money on things that get vandalised or end up not being totally user-friendly. Just have a look at the last issues. No, I think that was about it, other than journey times. Again, I will make... The reason why I want to look at the network is because, in certain areas, and I've said it before, in Bassett Law, you cannot get to the hospital. Not that many people are allowed to go these days, but if you do, or you could go, you can't get after 6 o'clock from some areas because that's the last bus. Or you can't, if people who want to use the nighttime economy, they can't go out because there's no services as such in the Bassett Law area. Yeah, we've got a good service that runs to Doncaster and the 25 that goes to Harworth and then and sometimes on to Doncaster and Bawtry. They're brilliant services, but they just serve one particular route. The rest of the Worksop, that's it. Gone. No buses from where I live. You can't get into the town centre. From Manton, another department, you can't get into the town centre. There's no service, in the evening at all, and that's got to be looked at in some way to enable people, even if it only lasted while the last visiting time at hospital, so people could get. So there are a number of issues that I think we still need to sort of get, and I'm sure each locality is the same, where we need to have that discussion around the localities. The bigger picture, I support, other than those provisos that I've mentioned earlier.
Right, okay, thank you. Mr Matheson, was the bit about the journey planning, I think, was it?
I could pick up most of these outside the meeting with you if you care for, but in regard to the journey planning, we want those in the right locations, especially where there isn't bus station staff to maybe deal with those queries. But we also need them to manage the sort of amount of inquiries that we have at the desk. But we are obviously continually reviewing and making sure they're user friendly. So I'd welcome your comments, maybe outside this meeting, on the difficulties that you've had using them. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Councillor Barney.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just very briefly to echo the sincere thanks to all bus service operators and drivers that Penny Gowland mentioned. Absolutely, what brave people to continue providing those services through COVID, and we all take our hats off to them. Also, just to pick up on the greenwashing comment about bus stops, I completely appreciate that. From the point of view of pound for pound and the carbon mitigation benefits afforded, it's probably questionable. However, the aesthetic impacts of doing such things and the community benefits and what it's the habitat benefits locally and mental health and all of that, I still think it's worth looking at. But I wonder if we could look at perhaps a local adoption program, perhaps involving other community groups, scouts, guides and such like, where we could find a methodology to do really nice things. I know in Germany this has been done, just to make our bus stops more attractive and get the message across and the local environment nicer. But totally get that we should be probably getting better bang for our buck, spending the same money elsewhere on carbon mitigation measures. Finally, I've got a constituent. I also welcome this report and thank the incredible amount of detailed work that's gone on in it. But I also would like to acknowledge the work of a local resident in my constituent, Mr. Steve Peters, who's an avid bus user. I live in a rural constituency. We're all going to have to use the bus a lot more, particularly in rural areas. But he's brought to me a very simple report that I would like to actually hand on to you and see whether there's any mileage in taking some of his suggestions forward. As a bus user over many years, the bus timetables in my neck of the woods have been set over many decades, and there's reasons why those services were established in the times they were established, but going back potentially, in some cases, 30, 40 years. And unfortunately, times have moved on. We've had East Midlands Parkway Station built, but the bus happens to arrive at East Midlands Parkway Station 5 minutes after the last hourly train to London has gone, which means you'd have an hour wait. I wonder how many simple tweaks to integrated approaches to timetables and transporting would enable lots of other people to start using the bus, people like myself who currently take the car just because I don't have time to wait for 55 minutes for a train I just missed. So I'd like to bring that report, but I also wonder if there's other areas across the whole county where actually the historical timetabling is probably not fit for the modern era.
Good. I'm sure that can be included in your reviewing process. Right, Councillor Ogre, you reserve the right to speak, but is there anything you... No? Great. Thank you. So we've got the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 on page 66, moved and seconded. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous, and thank you for all that work in this very detailed and comprehensive report. Thank you. Oh, sorry, improvement plan. Right, moving along to... Crack, I can't believe I'm saying this. Page 295. We need half an hour's break to turn all the pages to... Anyway, right, the PFI waste contracts and resources and waste strategy. Without further ado, time's getting on. Mr. Allen.
Yep, thank you very much, Chairman. Mindful of the agenda. Very briefly, the report sets out some history and context to the services as they're currently provided, as well as the performance and, across the county. It sets out the potential and expected improvements to services resulting from the Resources and Waste Strategy 2018, the Environment Bill, which is now the Environment Act as of last week, and seeks acknowledgement and approval to continue to work with our partners to improve and deliver services that meet the needs of the public, but also meet the aspirations and requirements of the legislation that is currently in play. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Obviously, waste is very much in the public's eye, and it is important. I'm glad to see in recommendation 2, for instance, a widening of products, and there's plastic bottle tops shown there, and we need to be encouraging all possible recycling. And indeed, it talks about the amount that is sent to landfill, and it's great that it's 5%, but obviously, hopefully we can have an ambition to still go as close to zero as we possibly can. I'm aware that other neighbouring authorities are at a higher rate, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't remain well ahead of the game and have that ambition to reduce it to as near to nothing as we possibly can. I will move the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 on page 301. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Chairman. Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chair. The contract mid-term review consultation was widely welcomed, but what really has changed as a result? The PFI contract that this council signed with Veolia is a great source of frustration for the waste handlers, i.e. the councils like Ashfield who collect the waste. Limited recycling input specifications puts Nottinghamshire in a poor position when compared to other counties. There is a strong and long-standing frustration from councils like Ashfield that despite repeated requests, there has been no move to increase the specification, i.e. to include plastic trays and foil and others. The stock response has been, it's from Veolia and the council, it's not in the contract. The contamination target of 5% is not feasible, and a revised figure of 10% has been suggested as more realistic. Appendix 1 shows the report that is received from Veolia. Those materials highlighted in green, although I believe this is black and white, I was looking at it online, highlighted in green are the materials that residents feel should be recycled but are considered to be contamination by Veolia. If Veolia did accept these, then Ashfield District Council's contamination rate would be half, just over 6%. However, the largest contamination reported by Veolia is reported as other prohibited. Can I request a breakdown of what these items are so we can target communications can take place in educating residents on not placing these items into their recycling bins? The current literature being used by Veolia will need to be redesigned and then reprinted, as it currently advises bottle tops can't be recycled. Will Veolia take the opportunity to review its approach to communicate relating to contaminations, as well as its approach to recycling in general? Would you agree to a meeting with senior managers from the waste collection authorities to review how communications can be improved? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Actually, well, I'm sort of partially ahead of you on that one, because I've already started talking to district councils, and it's my intention to actually have, along with officers, to have conversations with all the collection authorities. In terms of the bottle tops, it's actually specifically mentioned in the second recommendation, and then the third recommendation is the communications and engagement. I absolutely agree with you on that. We need to have an improved way of communicating the message to householders. I think it's a whole combination of COVID and various things that we've, and possibly lack of resources to a certain extent as well, in that perhaps there isn't as much engagement in terms of leaflets and so on to demonstrate to householders what they can and can't recycle. And I think we all need to be responsible for improving that message, because we really do want to reduce our waste to as minimal amount as possible. Just looking at the table on whichever page it was, I can't remember now, about the percentages, vary widely from district to district. And so it's important that we can work together more closely. One of the things I think that the Environment Bill / now Act will do, hopefully, is to be telling us a better specification as to what has to be recycled. And I sincerely hope that that's going to come to us PDQ.
Okay, I'll just come back on what you just said there, just to add to it, because I really appreciate what you've said there, actually, and just to fill you in with a bit, and it's good for all the members to hear this. I was there during a lot of these meetings, particularly the higher level ones, but the technical ones, I've had feedback from our operatives at Ashfield, the actual people who collect it and responsible for providing these figures as well. And the question they've asked is what actually has come out of those conversations, other than putting the bottle tops onto the non-contamination list and including the recycles. I think what we'd like to see is much of what you've just said there, and I'd probably ask you to involve a lot of those, as I've requested, in some of your knowledge, probably before we meet Veolia as well, because I think it's fair to say there's a lot more that could be included into the contract if they'd have it.
Well, we've actually got an ongoing dialogue, and I've actually, with officers, met with the Vice President of, I can't remember whether it's the UK or whatever, because it's my ambition to vastly increase the amount of products that are recycled, and that, more importantly, that householders can understand what it is that needs to be recycled, because we want to reduce this contamination down to as little as possible. It is something we've got to work together. Yes, it's been a frustration of mine regarding the specification of the contract, and that's why we want to enter into a dialogue to persuade, encourage, whatever word you'd like to use, and work more closely together with Veolia to increase the amount of products that are actually recycled. So it's an ongoing dialogue, and something which I'm very much, if you like, want a better expression, keeping an eye on. Councillor Gallen, then Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you. I mean, clearly everything that's been said is absolutely right about how, what cannot be recycled. I think the thing we need to remember, though, is one way to reduce recycling, to reduce waste going to landfill or incineration is simply to reduce waste. So I think maybe we need to actually also talk to residents about trying to change what they're putting in their bins, reduce what they're putting in their bins, but more importantly, maybe talk to government about trying to have regulations to control what goes into packaging, because at the moment we're trying to sort of fiddle about with what can or can't go in the bin, and it's very hard for people, it's very hard for me for sure to work out what my plastic bottle lid is made of, and so I think we need more clear limited contents in the packaging so it is recyclable. There is actually a market for it when it's all being recycled, because otherwise we're just going this stuff piled up somewhere unable to be used. So I think a sort of more holistic view is just what will go through the site at Mansfield needs to be considered, please.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, for sure. Councillor Wilmot, and then Councillor Barney.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think this council passed a motion recently declaring a climate emergency in May, which was welcome. And I also note that all council staff were put on a mandatory GDPR course, which I'm sure they will enjoy. Now, many local councils across the country will collect shredded paper in their regular household recycling collections. Some councils ask their residents to put the shredded paper in paper bags or in an envelope, or make sure it doesn't get trapped in the paper recycling machinery. Yet, we don't. I just wondered, this council advice to residents seems to either throw it in the compost bin or shove it in your waste bin. Now, I know this has been raised before about it. And do you feel that we should take some more proactive stance to recycle the shredded paper like other councils do? And I'm glad you brought up the table on page 296 it was, about the recycling rates. It is very concerning that some of the authorities are 50% less recycling than others. Do we have a meeting on this? Does all the councils get together and the one that's doing the 50% marvellous, are they asking or telling the others how they perform? Are they able to do this? Because some at 50% and some at 25%, I think that's unacceptable, really. Unless there's an underlying reason behind it all. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it'd be great if it was 100% across the board, wouldn't it? That would be a great ambition. I'm now on the Joint Waste Board, so certainly I should be using whatever influence I can to improve that and make sure that all the collection authorities are sharing best practice with each other, and certainly that the message of improving the recycling is got round and shared. Shredded paper. Yeah, I mean that's an ongoing frustration for me. Paper is paper. I understand the reasons, and I'm going to bring in Mr. Allen in a second because he's the technical guy and I'm not. But I know I keep getting told that shredded paper clogs up the machines and slips through and etc. etc. But it would be great if there was an actual way of recycling that. But Mr. Allen, would you like to clarify about things like shredded paper.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that. Yeah, shredded paper, you're right, absolutely. It does have difficulties in terms of its technical recycling through the mechanisms, because once it's shredded, it's in very small parts. But actually, the value of that paper is quite limited as well, because once it's shredded, particularly if it's cross-cut shredded, the actual paper strands that can then be recycled into other paper products are very short. And that's one of the reasons paper isn't constantly recyclable, because every time it goes through a process, the available pulp gets shorter and shorter and shorter, so therefore remanufacturing it into new things is harder. In terms of shredded paper, and if it gets into the recycling bin, it will go through the plant. If it's captured absolutely in a paper bag, that's probably the best way of doing it, because that allows it to go through as paper pulp. But we don't really want it through the mechanisms, because it does interfere with sorting processes, and a lot of the mechanisms are automatic, using lasers and magic eye type technology, and that gets very confused by shredded paper. It doesn't recognise what it is because of the way that it's set up. Probably just pick up on Joint Waste Management Committee and Joint Office Board, just to say we do already have that fora for discussion. Senior officers meet quarterly from all the districts, the city and ourselves, and with Veolia's management, and quarterly as well, slightly offset. There's a Joint Waste Management Committee, as Chairman says, that with the portfolio holders, senior officers, and with Veolia's senior management, and that is a fora there that's already set up to discuss and deal with some of those communication issues.
Okay, right. I think we don't want to keep a dialogue. Would you like to have a discussion with Mr. Allen after the meeting to sort of clarify some of these details? Yep. Councillor Barney.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to welcome this report. For me, it doesn't go far enough and it's far too slow. However, I don't want to be negative. I want to be positive. I want to applaud the fact that we're now going to be able to recycle these bottle tops. It's a tiny incremental step, but it's not when you do it across the whole county and then the whole country and the whole world. And I think that's the approach we need to have with climate change. And on the back of COP, we're all in this together. As far as possible, I'd like to depoliticise anything to do with the environment. This is about whether we all can share this planet together and continue living. So I'm celebrating this advancement with the bottle tops and the ability to recycle. Well done, Chairman, well done, Committee, and well done, officers. Just on Veolia, I appreciate that we're in a contractual arrangement with Veolia for the long term, which is good. And I note on page 300, there's three paragraphs that refer to the Veolia contract and Veolia itself. We can take comfort in the fact that the report in paragraph 38 on page 300 indicates that as Veolia are the UK's leader in waste management and can ensure our waste is dealt with effectively, sustainably and ethically. And also paragraph 40, it talks about a number of ways in which our relationship with Veolia can help the Council achieve its aims of being carbon neutral in all its activities by 2030. Brilliant words, but I'm wondering if we could have more detail on what the specifics are behind that, so that we can ensure that we get the best out of the relationship and our contract with Veolia for the residents of Nottinghamshire. Thank you.
I don't know, Mr. Allen, do you have a very short response to that?
I think it's fair to say that when we met with Veolia's Vice President UK and Ireland, which is in effect their UK Chief Executive, we discussed the wider role that Veolia has as a waste treatment and a resource management company. They obviously deal with green energy in a number of ways, various technologies and elements within that, including water treatment, etc., etc. And I think we felt that there were certainly plenty of ways where Veolia, as a large multinational with a massive range of skills and resources to hand, could help us in delivering some of the green technology issues, some of the transfer of fleet type issues into alternative fuels, etc., because they're doing that as an organisation. So what we want to do is learn from them as a good public sector, private sector partnership, in order to make sure that we as a county council are learning the lessons that might already be out there in industry as well. So it was more around what they do as an organisation across their whole range of services that we can buy into, we can learn from, and we can work together to deliver.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Matt's covered most of what I wanted to say, but I was just wondering how long the contract is for with Veolia.
It's 27. We've got 16 years through a 27-year contract, so another 11 years to go.
Another 11 years. So the contract originally was for 27 years.
Yeah. Okay.
Strange.
You don't want to let me back, do you?
Not really, no. I'm trying to keep things going, despite the fact that I've been far too lenient with Councillor Hollis and Councillor Wilmot. So I'll have to be hard-nosed with you now. Right. Recommendation. Sorry, you did reserve the right. Having said all that, you reserved the right to speak, didn't you?
Thank
Right,
you,
that's
Chairman.
enough.
Nothing else to add. I'm going to stop laughing because I'm taking up even more time. Welcome the report and look forward to improvements that we can bring all along as well. I know it's really important that we review this strategy. It's important that we look at waste as an asset as well as we move forward, and no longer as necessarily a resource that just gets buried in the ground. I actively want to remove, get away from burying anything in the ground whatsoever. Recycle what we can, reuse what we can, and turn into energy, whether that be through food waste into biogas or through burning it to make electricity. However we go about it, we've got to make sure that we no longer bury it in the ground for other generations to deal with in the future. And that has to stop. The book stops with us. It has to stop now, in my opinion. And so I'm glad that we're moving along those lines, and I see developments across the county to ensure that's implemented. Other than that, just a small thing, very small thing on paper. If it's newspaper or plain paper, it can actually go in your compost, shredded, as long as it's not the heavy printed stuff, which can contain some heavy metals in it and things like that. So if it's newspaper or plain paper, you can actually put that in your compost bin, and the worms will do the job for you. That's it. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. So the recommendations 1, 2 and 3 have been moved and seconded on page 301. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous again. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to agenda item 8, the local aggregates assessment. Mrs. Gill, please.
Thank you, Chairman. As members will be aware, the County Council is a minerals planning authority, and we have to prepare a minerals local plan. And as part of the monitoring of the plan, which members will remember was adopted in March, we have to track the sale of aggregate minerals to ensure that there is a steady and adequate supply of minerals and that can be provided over the plan period. And this is done by a local aggregates assessment, which we have to produce on a yearly basis, and this reviews the sales data from the industry so we can ascertain whether the supply of minerals is adequate, or do we need to look for more sites or review the plan area, the plan period. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we didn't, a review wasn't carried out this time last year. So the paper before you has a document for the current year and the year before. But I'm pleased to say we have a requirement to have a minimum of a 7-year land bank for sand and gravels and aggregates, and I'm pleased to say our land bank is currently 12.74 years. So we've got enough minerals with permission or on allocated sites to last us for the next 12 years on current building rights. It is a very technical document, and myself and Steve Pointer, who's joined us via Teams, will be very happy to answer any detailed questions on this, but this is a document we produce every year for you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. You're quite right. Yes, it is extremely detailed. Not quite as detailed as the bus improvement plan, so you've still got some work to do. But anyway, if I could move the recommendation on page 308, if I can have a seconder, please.
Formally second, Chairman, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Barney.
Thank you, Mrs. Gill, and thank you. I think we've got Steve on the screen there as well. I welcome this report. I enjoyed reading it, and I was delighted that I found it actually the easiest report to understand out of all of these hundreds of pages of report and all the documents. So well done, you guys. I was also cheered in my reading of the report to see that this authority has as you rightly point out, a 12.74-year land bank of supply against a government requirement of 7 years, and also to see the very positive sales demand, which has been less, I think, than was expected. So with those two things combined, I just wanted to ask the question, in light of the local minerals plan, whether all of the sites earmarked in the locals mineral plan for future quarrying will be required, and if indeed any of them could either be postponed or taken out of that plan. I've got a second question as well, and I know that Mr. Chairman will only allow me this one point to speak. I also noted just in paragraph 3.36 on page 329, it talks about recycled and secondary aggregates. And it says here, no sales data exists for specific types of recycled or secondary aggregates. However, as these types of aggregates are available on the open market, their contribution is already taken into account when calculating future demand for primary aggregates. I was confused by that one paragraph, just because if no data exists, how on earth can it have been used to as part of the measure in determining the local supply and their use, recycled aggregates use to meet that supply? Thank you.
Mrs. Gill.
Right, I'll start with Councillor Barney's first question. Yeah, the supply of the land bank is a combination of sites that have got planning permission and allocated sites in the local plan. So if our supply of sites dip down below 7 years supply, then the operators could come to us with proposals that were on non-allocated sites, and we would have to consider them. Obviously, if, as we have a 12-year land bank, if operators come to us with proposals on non-allocated site, it's easier to resist them, but it ensures that sites are developed in accordance with the plan. And obviously, if we feel that we haven't got a sufficiently large land bank, then we might have to come to you and say we need to start reviewing the minerals local plan sooner. With regard to aggregate, the reuse of aggregates, obviously if there are secondary aggregates that can be reused and the development industry is already reusing them, then they're not going to come to the primary aggregate industry. So hopefully by reuse of construction materials, etc., that means people aren't needing sand and gravel that's come straight out of the ground. I don't know whether you've got anything further to add to that, Steve?
I hope you can all hear.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Excellent. The position regarding the review of the plan is that currently we have taken account of future sales in our plan. If there is a position in 2 or 3 years, we have to review the plan after 5 years. If there is an over provision compared to sales, then potentially, and sites have not been come forward as a planning permission, then there is the provision to deallocate at that point. But we have to go through a formal review of the plan process to do that. But it is possible.
Okay, right. Thank you very much indeed for that. If there's no further questions, Councillor Adams, anything to say?
Nothing to add, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have the recommendation to approve publication. All those in favour, please. Is unanimous. Thank you very much. So we now come on to some of the more sort of operational items. Agenda item 9, the proposed bus stop clearways at Brick Kiln Lane, Mansfield. Mr. Coates.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of the report is to consider the objections received in respect of the proposal to implement bus stop clearways on Brick Kiln Lane in Mansfield. These have come about following reports of obstructive parking affecting the bus services, which is why this proposal has been put together. Details are contained in the report of objections that were received. A total of 9 were received during the consultation, including a 24-signature petition. 8 of those are considered outstanding. Details are contained within the report, together with the responses and the recommendations are outlined on page 380. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll move the recommendations on page 308. Seconder, please. Thank you. Any comments, questions? If not, then all those in favour, please. Unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 10, well, I can turn the page fast enough. Here we go. So this is Dovecote Lane Traffic Regulation Order. Mr. Coots.
Thank you, Chairman. Purpose of the report is to consider the objections received in respect of the Traffic Regulation Order proposal for prohibition of waiting and parking places in Dovecote Lane area in Beeston. This is linked to a planning permission to build new dwellings associated closely to Dovecote Lane, and it's to allow free and safe use of the road in that area. There were 4 responses received to the consultation. 2 of those, including one from County Councillor Fole, are considered outstanding objections. Details are provided within the report, and the recommendations are outlined on page 394. Thank you.
Thank you. I will move the recommendation at the top of page 394. Seconder, please. Thank you. I don't know, Councillor Gallen, were you wanting to?
So I note that these are parking spaces that are intended at the moment for use by the pub, and this is, I don't know if people know it, it's a sort of a landmark pub. It's very well known in the area. People will drive to it. Losing those parking spaces will not only impact on the pub's sustainability, but also living as I do in West Bridgford and knowing how residents suffer from the nighttime economy. What this is likely to mean is that people who come to this pub are now, frankly, encouraged to park in the residential roads that are going to be built. So I think this may have a knock-on consequence of causing trouble in the future, where cars that come to the pub have to park somewhere and then park in the residence areas. So I would think it might be better to come up with a better solution that retains this parking for this pub.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Fole, are you wanting to? Have you got a microphone? If you could be very brief, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, and thank you, and sorry not to give you prior notice. I didn't realise it was coming up today, to be honest with you. Yeah, just to reiterate, thank you to Councillor Gallant, who's explained some of this. I just wanted to share some real concerns here. I know some of these are outside the remit of this committee, but it has been a real concern to me, living in Beeston, in a similar kind of area to West Bridgford, where there's development after development after development being proposed. We need the houses, I realise that. But the impact on that community and the difficulty when you're dealing between 2 authorities, where one is highways and one is planning is actually causing real problems in my division. And I know I'm not alone. This is a narrow road. There's no off-street parking to speak of. There are new developments all over the place. There are big developments going on throughout the whole of that region, the whole of that area that's going to impact on this. This could have significant benefit on that business. And one other thing I wanted to suggest to you as well is that this is a very narrow road, as I said to you before. Access is actually very limited. I think there are significant health and safety concerns. And clearly this whole area, although I know there's only a small number of complaints or concerns raised in the report, this has been massive in my division, and I just wanted to make you aware of this. And I notice in the impact assessment, the proposals will ensure effective and safe movement of pedestrians and vehicles to and from the new development. I'm not sure how anybody could come to that conclusion, to be honest with you. I think this is there's a real issue here. So thank you for Councillor Galland. I think this is a real issue, and I think it's something that perhaps we can't kind of solve in this committee. But I'm not that convinced that the message is getting across that sometimes we have to actually put the people living in that residential area first and the businesses first before we automatically can just stick up a hand and say, well, actually, we need the houses, we need the new development, which clearly we do, but it needs to be measured and it needs to not have a really detrimental impact on what's going on in the rest of the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Mr. Coots in a second for a response as to whether all these aspects were taken into account. I'll just make the comment that obviously we are not the local planning authority, so obviously we haven't got that authority over planning permissions, etc. But Mr. Coots, can you confirm that all these aspects were taken into account in coming to your recommendation?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we did look at the conflicts, and I understand the points that were made by both the councillors. Unfortunately, we had to deal with the fact that the planning permission hadn't been granted, and although there is some work to realign Dovecote Lane, we felt that the safe passage and use of that road, understanding, of course, the impacts that it would have by adjusting the parking on the local public house, that this was necessary to ensure that there was effective and safe movement of vehicles and pedestrians to the new development.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Guilfoyle?
Chairman, I've been in a similar position to this where some traffic regulations come into place, but they have an impact on other areas. And I just wondered whether clearly officers are saying that this is going to resolve another problem, but at the same time creates one. And I don't know whether it's worth suggesting that, you know, that a review be done on this after a period of time so that members can look at that and see whether the implications and the fears that local members got have come into fruition. I've got a particular area where we've had, because of the hospital, parking problems. They've moved exactly where we thought they would, onto another location, now in my patch, not in other members' patch, because you can't park in that patch because they've double yellow lined it. And now they're causing a problem in another area. And I think that's sometimes a problem that we end up with. And I think this is what the fear is for the local member.
Thank you. I suppose whilst I'm very much an advocate of encouraging business, etc., the only thing I perhaps would say is that we're not here to actually supply car parks for businesses. So it is a very difficult situation. I don't know, Mr. Coots, do you have any further response to what Councillor Guilfoyle was raising?
Thank you, Chair. I understand completely the point that Councillor Guilfoyle makes, that it's always a balance of trying to sort out the conflicting occurrences that happen. And I think we all understand that, and it is at times a difficult balance to reach and to reach the conclusion. But effectively, we are looking at the safe use of the highways as best we can.
Could I just ask you, Mr. Coots, is it practical that it would be a temporary measure to see how it pans out, for want of a better expression?
Chairman, I don't believe that in this instance that would be, because the planning is going ahead. As I understand, the planning has got permission, so the houses will be built. So the situation will arise where we'll have a conflict at that location.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that I can't see how we can undo it, if you see what I mean, if we did it as a temporary situation.
Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. And it's not for me to speak too much on Councillor Foles' area, but the very fact she spoke to it, and there seems to be, to me, a conflict between what the officers are saying, what local residents are saying, and what Councillor Foles advocating for. And to me, out of everybody that's in the room, she's the person that knows best about that particular street. So I'd probably request, I presume, on Councillor Foles' indulgences that we maybe defer this until the next meeting, so at least the officers can take time to review the documents, because I think, as Doug's made very clear, we either do it or we don't do it. And I think I'd suggest maybe 4 or 5 weeks. Prolonging it won't make a difference, just to make sure everything's right and Councillor Foles able to have a bit of time with Doug and yourself, just to make sure this is the right decision we're taking. I know if it was in my division, I'd certainly want that. So I'm happy to recommend a deferral, Chairman, with your indulgence.
Well, Councillor Hollis, I'm getting more and more concerned that you're reading my mind. This is because something's got to happen here. Because I was about to suggest that I mean, there clearly is local concern. Officers have quite rightly issued their report. It's come to a committee of members, and it is the members to decide, and to be sure that we are making sure that we've got given due consideration to all the factors. Then I would suggest that perhaps this is an appropriate thing to, let's defer it to the next meeting, which will give us time for us to have a look for ourselves as members, because clearly there are big issues involved. So would that gain favour? Yeah. So I think by general agreement here and consensus, if we can defer this one, and so, if you like, I did move it, but now I'm suggesting that we do actually hold fire and defer it, and let's bring it back again when we've had a look at it for ourselves.
Just for the formal side of it, which I know Noel's going to shout us all for. So if I propose a deferral, and I'm sure Councillor Garland would like to second the deferral. Or do we not need to do that?
Chairman can move it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just stayed ahead of you again. Just. Sorry, is this a point of procedure?
Will there be a site visit arranged for? Because I think we're all in complete agreement with this, but I think we ought to go and look at it.
Yeah, I think what is the best thing is that rather than have a formal single visit, let's have is for you to go to the officers to ask for specific information that you want to go, and you go and have a look at it in the light of having been briefed from officers. What are the factors to look at, and so do that prior to the next meeting. Okay. Right.
Can I just say thank you very much? That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Agenda item 11. We're moving on to Sherwood Street, Warsop. Mr. Coots.
Thank you, Chairman. Purpose of this report is to review objections received in respect of the traffic regulation order and zebra crossing, which is proposed at Sherwood Street in Worksop. This is around the local junior school, Sherwood Junior School, which is located on Sherwood Street. There are previously some safety provisions had been implemented. However, the County Council has received requests, including a 323 signature petition for an additional measures to improve safety and the implementation of a zebra crossing. Details of the 11 responses that were received, all of which are considered to be outstanding, are considered within the report, and the recommendation is on page 405. Thank you.
Thank you. And in looking at that recommendation on page 405, I'll move that recommendation. Seconder. Thank you. And I note that the divisional member is in support of this particular proposal. Any comments? No. All those in favour of that recommendation? That's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 12, responses to petitions. Mr. Wood.
Thank you. Yes, there are 3 petitions from full council. I don't think I've ever said this before, but the recommendations are on page 415 of the committee papers. Thank you.
And indeed, I will move those recommendations on page 415 if I have a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. Just wanted to welcome the response presented to full council with regards to the homesteads in Kirkby and Ashfield by Councillor Andy Meakin. The fact that it's now been actively considered is down to the hard work and tenacity by Andy, Councillor Meakin. He has asked me to pass on the thanks to officers for visiting this road in October. He also welcomes the fact, due to the age of the residents, it will be inspected quarterly, and he looks forward to it being included in the Highways Maintenance Programme for 21-22. And no doubt Councillor Meakin will be walking this on a daily basis and looking forward to action being taken ASAP. But I just wanted to thank our officers on behalf of Councillor Andy Meakin and the Independent Alliance Group. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to welcome the response to the petition I handed into full council, petition B, regarding a residential parking scheme on Beacon Hill Road. Point 9, paragraph 9 of the report says that we're going to carry out surveys to look at bringing in a residential parking scheme, which is a fantastic tribute to the residents who spent a good few hours talking to me on their doorsteps while I was collecting signatures for that petition, and welcome news. It does say that resident parking schemes only assist when problems are caused by intrusive parking by non-residents. I can assure the officers when they do go out and carry out the further works that those parked cars come from the theatre and college and are not of residents on Beacon Hill Road, hence the problem. So I'm sure you'll come to the same conclusion as I and the residents, and hope to see the residential parking scheme in action soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, so recommendations have been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 13, attendance at digital conference. I'll move that recommendation. And a seconder.
Formally second, reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Anybody? No. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item 14. I can't believe we've got this item, a work programme. I think we've done the entire year's work programme. I can't believe there's anything left still to do. But I'm sure there probably is. I don't know, is there anything you want to add at this stage? No. Yeah. Councillor Gowland?
I'd like to suggest 2 things. One is car sharing, so that the council consider car sharing schemes, which is not where you share a lift in a car, but where you share a car. And this can either be via a hire car company, and there are hire car companies operating in the city at the moment where you can hire per hour, or peer-to-peer car sharing, rather like Airbnb for cars. There's various companies that do this. The reason the county needs to get involved seems to be because the hire cars need some arrangement with the county. I don't quite understand what it is. And it also will impact on parking, because it will obviously require parking areas, but it could have a very positive impact on parking, because if just a few % of people decided they didn't need a second car but could opt for this, or didn't need a first car and could opt for this, then obviously it would reduce the parking problems that we have in the built-up areas in the centre of the city. It could also help with some of the electric charging problems we're going to have. And the second thing I'd like to ask is that in light of the climate emergency that was called back in May, and I understand a team that are going to be working in the county to look at it, I would like to suggest that we review the environmental impact assessments and officers' reports, because I don't think they really are always there. I'm not quite sure what the current policy is on them, but they're sometimes there, sometimes not, and they're not very effective, I would suggest, and that maybe they need to look not only at sort of the interaction with the environment, but the actual environmental impacts of the activity, including the things that are going to be brought into the county. The county has the opportunity here to be a beacon, providing maybe a service out to the county, other companies in the county, on understanding the environmental impact of their purchases and things like that. Thank you.
Right. Okay. I'm sure that yeah, the car sharing is a subject I think that we could look at in the context of helping to save car journeys, and maybe look at all aspects of car sharing. But I accept what you're saying. The environmental improvement assessments. I don't know, Mr. Smith. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just briefly, we're going to be bringing some reports in the new year around environment strategy, but one of the things that we're doing is to seek some additional support that will sit in our team, that will be able to support the whole organisation with how it engages more in a more rigorous way in those environmental assessments on reports. So that should improve not just in this committee but across the board going forward, and we'll certainly pick up car charging as well in a report early in the new year. Sorry.
Great. Okay. Councillor Hollis.
No, but I can't say what I'm going to say is we're going to beat that car sharing thing. I think that's really a good idea. You'll recall, Mr. Chairman, I mentioned at the last meeting about the out-of-hours team and the poor particular personal experience I had, I know others have, particularly confusing Leamington Estate with Leamington Spa, and wasn't clear whether Sutton in Ashfield was part of the city, which I thought was quite shocking. Just ultimately, Mr. Chairman, when are we going to get round to scrutinising the out-of-hours team as a request at the last meeting? I know it's not in the work programme yet, and obviously the value for money for taxpayers is poor, and I think we should probably be looking at it ASAP.
As regards when, I'm not absolutely sure, but it's certainly it needs to be on the list. So let's get it programmed in, but I can't give you an assurance exactly when. Okay. Right. So with that, the recommendations that we agree the work programme, I don't know whether I moved it or not, but I'm moving it now and seconding it. Well,
can I ask a question just for clarity? And Noel and Adrian also might be able to help it. When there's been 2 additions to the work programme mentioned, how does that include it? Are you noting that in what we're voting for now that they're going to be considered? I'm always a bit confused.
Yeah, I suppose what I could say is that with the addition of...
Yeah, sorry to be particular.
Yeah, I'm absolutely happy that... and that's, of course, why I didn't move the recommendation earlier, because I knew that there would be additions that had to be put on where I could then say, I move the recommendations with the addition of the items that have been mentioned. Is that okay? Jolly good. Right, all those in favour? And that's unanimous as well. Thank you very much indeed for your attention. Very detailed agenda, and I'm very pleased we've got through that. So I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much, and thank you for those that may still be watching on live stream as well. Thank you.